Well, it's not as cool as the Mini Tough Light, so... No, I'm kidding. But in all honesty, the reason that this knife has sort of jumped my review queue and is being reviewed before a couple of older blades is because I've decided that I want to sell it. Yeah, the collection's getting pretty big, and at this point, if I'm not really in love with something, I'm not seeing a whole lot of reason to keep it anymore. Rather either trade it on Instagram or sell it, get some money, buy something else that I am a little bit more interested in. However, you guys will see throughout the review that I do not think this knife is a bad knife. It's actually a pretty good knife. I just don't think it really measures up to some of its competition. We're talking about the Spyderco Chicago. This is Logan here with Hydra 572. We're going to do a review. Start in with intended usage. Obviously, for a blade this size, we're pretty much looking at EDC utility type cutting. I put emergency defensive on there because my test for emergency defensive is, if it came down to defending myself, would I rather have this blade or just not worry about it and go with any other implement that I might have, or just go hand to hand? And I think with this blade I would rather have it. However, this isn't the sort of knife that would make you feel more comfortable, make you feel like you were better able to defend yourself. Not like something like the Cold Steel Espada or the extra large Voyager. I don't think I really need to elaborate on that. It sort of goes just by looking at the blade. On to pricing, we're talking $45 on Blade HQ or $40 on eBay. The blade profile, a pretty traditional, though pretty stubby Spyderco leaf blade. The tip is pretty acute, if anything, just by merit of having an exceptionally thin blade stock. For some reason won't focus. The belly, well, with this design we have about as much as we were going to get. With a knife this small, if you're using it in your EDC cutting a whole lot, you're probably just going to get into a routine of sharpening it fairly often and sharpening the whole blade. So you might not have to worry about only dulling the first inch or so. That might just be something that you can handle pretty easily. Sharpening the blade shouldn't take too long because it is very short. Less strokes on your sharpening media. Onto the steel, we have 440C, and I'll be honest, I did some pretty minimal edge retention tests. However, as far as I can tell, it is acting like what I've come to expect from 440C. That is, it takes a just screaming edge relatively easily. You do have to remove the material, but it is a fairly easy material to get to a hair popping edge. And the retention, well, it retains sort of differently than other stainless steels. It doesn't just keep an edge until the edge isn't there anymore. It doesn't quickly go from being able to shave to not being able to shave, or from being able to cut paper to not being able to cut paper. It degrades a little bit more slowly and more saw-like, so it gets toothy before it gets dull. So it continues cutting for quite a long time. That is something that I like about the steel. However, it doesn't keep that hair popping edge for a long time because it gets more toothy. Moving on to grind, we have a full flat with enough of an unground portion, I think, to clamp it into the wicked edge or lay it down on an Edge Pro Apex, anything like that that you need to do. On to deployment. One of the first things I noticed when I got the blade is a very positive detent. Watch me not deploy it. That just means a very strong detent. So pretty much with this small of a handle coming out of your pocket in tip up, the only real logical deployment is just your standard Spidey hole, thumb stud, analog opening, like that. And you can hear that is a very strong detent. I do sort of misdeploy it relatively often, not like 2 out of 5 times like you've seen on camera so far. You can do your Spidey flicks and whatnot, but like I said, with a really small handle, it's just going to come out of your hand, out of your pocket in a comfortable position to just flick it open like that, get to whatever you're doing. The lock is a liner lock, no jimping available. As you guys can see, it is down there in the second choil. You actuate it with your thumb. It took a little bit of getting used to, but it is very doable. It is sort of a aggressive liner lock in terms of how hard you have to push, and with not being jimped or even really chamfered at all, you are sort of pushing into a bare edge. So that will tend to make your thumb a little bit more sensitive, but hopefully with a blade this small, you're not whipping it out and cutting all the time. Hopefully this is more for someone who doesn't need a knife very often in their day-to-day routine. Play, side to side, we've got a little bit with a standard amount for a knife in this price range, and front to back, not a whole lot at all actually. The handle, typical for Spyderco, we have G10 over steel liners. The steel liners are milled, though pretty minimally because they're very small. See if you can barely see. Yeah, you can see like 1 or 2 mill holes in there. Very light knife anyway, 2.2 ounces. The ergonomics, actually pretty good. Like I said, when I got it out of the box, did the first impressions, I noticed that it was a very blocky handle. I've sort of gotten over that, and I've gotten over having the weird feeling of the wire clip as well. It is actually a pretty comfortable knife. You get to engage all 4 fingers, get your thumb on the back there with your Filipino grip. It is actually pretty comfortable. Maybe takes some getting used to. Like I said, right out of the box, I thought, wow, that is a blocky handle. But I sort of found where I like it to sit in my hand, and it sits in there well, and it is pretty comfortable. Same throughout the cutting tests, it was comfortable. The jimping, we don't have any. Why? We really could use jimping on the liner lock to sort of make it less aggressive on your thumb, and some jimping on the back. This is a knife that it doesn't need to be pretty looking, so we could have had jimping all the way down the spine, and it would have helped make everything a little bit more comfortable, help tack your thumb on, make your cutting a little bit more aggressive. The clip, well, I'm very aware that wire clips are a little bit lighter and quite a bit stronger than stamped steel clips. I just don't like them. Something about how they tension on the pocket, something about how they hang outside the pocket. I'm not sure what it is. I'm just not a fan of any wire clip I've ever carried, and this one is no exception. So there's nothing wrong with it. It's just not my preference. 2-way reversible, tip up on both sides. That's what you got, and really I don't have a problem with that. Like I said, knives in this price range tend not to have 4-way reversible clips, or rather this size range and price range. Not sure why that is with small knives. You just don't get 4-way reversible, I guess, as deemed by someone. Presentation, it's okay. In all honesty, it's a small, funny looking knife. That's just what it is. When knives get this small, they tend to be kind of funny looking or cute looking. They just can't look awesome the same way a knife the size of the Endura can. That is what it is. But working with what you're working with, I tend to like the Spyderco aesthetic, and that holds true here as well. So it looks fine. Quality, well, we do have a pretty bad centering issue, and I looked up some forum posts, and some other people had issues with centering as well. When I got the blade, it actually was rubbing, but it came from a different owner, so I wasn't going to rip it a new one for that. But even after I tried to adjust the centering, it sort of pushed back over there. I think the liner lock is very broad. The lock bar is actually most of the width of the handle at the point near the engagement with the face of the blade. So I think it's probably pretty strong and exerting a lot of force over on that blade. I don't know. Centering does seem to be an issue with this model, though I wouldn't say it's ubiquitous. It's probably a pretty situational, one knife at a time sort of thing. And like I said, I did adjust it away from rubbing, so I guess I can't complain, but it was pretty close to rubbing still after being adjusted. Other than that, I didn't get to experience the stock edge, though I'll give Spyderco the benefit of the doubt. Most every edge I've gotten from them has been fantastic. Value, 440C and G10 for $40 isn't bad. 440C is kind of looked down upon. I'm not sure why, because I think it's a pretty cool and unique steel, but it is what it is. It's looked down upon, and I guess what I'm getting at is it's not knocking me out. It's about what I would expect. Competition, and that's really where this knife starts to lose for me. As you guys heard, it was a pretty positive review. There's nothing glaringly wrong with the knife, the centering issue aside, and the jimping. But the competition for this blade really kills it. And we have to sort of go back to your intended usage. If you are buying this knife specifically because you live in a place like this knife's namesake, the Spyderco Chicago, designed for people living in Chicago who can't carry a locking knife over 2 inches in blade length or something like that. If you do, you have to cut off a chicken's head and write a letter to your senator, and it's a mess. If you are looking for a blade under 2 inches to cope with legality, the Cold Steel Mini Tough Light, I hate to keep beating this drum, but blade under 2 inches and a fantastic option. Better ergonomics, I think an easier to use blade profile for this sort of design, just an overall better knife. A little bit lighter, I think. Yeah, I'll say a little bit lighter. Cool handle coloration, and Aussate, which is a little bit more of a known quantity for cheap knives, EDC usage, stuff like that. So if you are looking for a under 2 inch blade length, you've got this option. If you aren't worried about the 2-inch blade length, K-Bar Mini Dozier comes in. Very cool knife. Again, similar ergonomics, I'll say. That is not perfect, but pretty damn impressive for a knife this small. And what steel are we using here? I don't even know. If you're not looking at the under 2-inch blade range, I would actually try to push you toward a little bit bigger of a blade if you were looking for an EDC cutter. If you weren't looking for a complement to a larger knife, like I said, I use these blades as a complement to a larger knife. If you're looking for a one-knife EDC, I think even for people who don't want an obtrusive knife, this is going to be a little bit small. If you're not bound by legality, I would tell you to look at the Ambitious and the Persistence designed by Spyderco, and the Cat, which is just a larger version of this blade. Checked it out at the Spyderco outlet the other day. I think I would like it quite a bit better. So look at those options. As always, Spyderco tending to sort of invalidate some of their knives with some of their other knives. So look at the Ambitious, Persistence, and Cat if you would like to stick with Spyderco and you're willing to go a little bit bigger if you're not really bound by that 2-inch legality. And if you are bound by the 2-inch legality, Cold Steel Mini Tough Light is damn near perfect, actually. I really like this blade. It inspired the purchase of these three, as well as the Boker Nano, which was not reviewed very well. And the K-Bar Mini Dozier as well. For some reason, if you're not grooving on the Mini Tough Light, there you go. There's another competitive option. So, pass-fail, well, like I said, I don't really have many issues with the knife as a whole. The ergonomics aren't perfect. The end feels a little bit bulbous in this area. The liner lock is sort of a pain. What with the extremely positive detent and all, it will cause you to scrub some deployments. It just doesn't feel as high quality as a lot of other Spyderco detents do. Not sure if that's just my model or my example. And of course lacking jimping. But overall I'm going to say fail, just because it doesn't really measure up to its competitive options. The things competing with this knife just tend to be a little bit better. I think the Chicago is an older design. I think a lot of the knives that I'm talking about have emerged since this knife was put out on the market. So, you know, it is what it is. So, a rare miss for the Spyderco crew. I would advise you elsewhere, unless, I don't know, maybe if you're from Chicago and if you're looking for a namesake, that'd be cool. I wish Spyderco would put out a knife named after a city or a mountain or something in Colorado, here where they're from, because a lot of us people in Colorado would buy one. But hey, whatever. Let's finish up with some stats. Overall length of 5 inches. Seriously? That's 5 inches? Jesus, now I know what women feel like. The blade length is actually 2 inches overall blade length, with 1.75 inch cutting edge. I don't know the specific legalities in Chicago, but I would think that laws talking about blade pertain to cutting edge, not like this unsharpened part of a choil. So I think if you had 2 inches of actual cutting edge, that makes this knife almost as big as the Cat, which I think people would like a little bit better. So yeah, I don't know. The handle length 3.15 inches, blade thickness 0.093 inches, pretty thin blade stock, and weight 2.2 ounces. It actually feels a little bit heavier than 2.2 ounces because it's just kind of bulky, but overall a very light knife you can clip inside or outside your pocket and forget about it. No glaring issues, but overall doesn't measure up to some astounding competition being thrown its way. Thank you guys for watching. Stay tuned for more of the same.